And welcome to Pop Screen, the heavy monster podcast that likes to cover the good, the bad, and the ridiculous of movies, either starring, by, or about pop stars. No, the podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson, a filmmaker and artist, and a regular contributor to the Geek Show and its Patreon. And I'm joined this week by...
You're joined by Mark Cunliffe, who is also a regular contributor to the Geek Show and a reviewer on IndieMDB. And I've also got a chapter in Scarred for Life Volume 2, and I write for Arrow Film.
Nice. Now, I think this is the second in our autobiopics season of films where bands play not only characters based on themselves, but actually themselves, which is, I think, a bigger distinction than it sounds. But yes, we will get that episode on Cypher out. We've been having a bit of trouble tracking down a copy of Cypher, which I assume is part of the conspiracy the film is about. But we will get that on Patreon very soon. But for now, we are covering a very interesting film, I think, and a very overlooked film. We're covering Take It or Leave It.
Yeah, which is about... It's about madness.
They call it madness, yes.
They call it madness. They did an advert in the 90s, buy a Seconda, it will fill you with gladness. It's for watches. So I always remember that. So when you listen along to madness now, in my head I've got, buy a Seconda, it'll fill you with gladness, which is terrible.
I don't remember that. I remember, certainly in the 80s, it felt like every single commercial jingle was a rewritten version of some absolutely classic rock and roll song, so that when I actually got old enough to listen to Chuck Berry and the Rolling Stones, I was like, oh, why are they singing the Scotch tape jingle? What's up with that?
And then you got the reverse of that, of course, is Hello Toshiba, Ian Dury, which you would imagine is like a song by Ian Dury, and he's riffing on, but no, it's when Alexi Sale comes along and does Hello John Got a New Motor.
Yes. Yeah. Strange times, really.
Yeah, very strange times.
Yeah. People talk about these days being really postmodern and post-truth and confusing, but they haven't had to deal with, a VHS company doing a version of Not Fade Away for their advertising jingle. They don't know what it's like.
They don't know what that's like. No, that's true. As I say, some of those strange times are evinced in this movie, really, aren't they? Because it's very 1981, isn't it?
Yeah, very specifically early 80s, I think. It's in that interesting spot, like some of the things we've done, like What a Whopper, for instance, which is technically a 60s movie, but it does not feel 60s at all. It's too early in the decade for that. And this is definitely that bit of the 80s where things are starting to change, but it's not the 80s we all think of yet.
No, it's almost like the fag end of the 70s, isn't it? You'd sort of put this film alongside something like Pressure.
Yes.
Films like that kind of corrugated fencing look of London. It's really quite decrepit and shabby sort of parts of London.
It's weird that it doesn't feel more 80s because it is about a band who held the record, I think, jointly with UB40 for the most weeks spent by any group in the UK singles chart during the 80s.
Yeah, which tells you that a lot of white boys like to dance to.
Yeah.
to black rhythms in the 80s, didn't they?
Yeah, and I suppose they've kind of transcended that decade, because I think when you ask people what what's an 80s British band, they will say Duran Duran or Culture Club, or hell, even the Smiths or Echo and the Bunnymen, before they get around to Madness. I think they are so much more than an 80s band now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree. In fact, it'd be interesting to see if you look at any of those generic 80s compilation tapes and CDs, how many Madness tracks are on there. Considering, as you said, considering how prolific their output was, how successful their output was, I imagine there's probably not many tracks on
No.
those sort of compilations. You would have to wade through a lot of Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran,
Yes.
Wham, Culture Club before anybody thought of Madness, which is strange, really.
So what's your, I mean, you've bought the T-shirt, obviously, but what's your history with Madness like then? If we've discussed the country's history with Madness, what's yours?
I was a big Madness fan in sort of like my teens and my 20s. In fact, this is probably the first and last time I'd watched this film before doing this Pop Screen podcast was the late 90s, I think, via...
Nice.
Does anyone remember VH1?
Yeah,
Music
yeah.
channel. Yeah, I think it was on VH1 on a Sunday night, and I was like, "Oh, right, I'll record this." Back when you actually used to record things on VHS.
Yeah, I'm at the moment I'm reading Tove Janssen's novel Fair Play, and there is an absolutely like Proustian moment in it where the lead character is supposed to go out and meet a friend, but she can't because there's a film she wants to watch on telly, and she needs to stay in and cut out all the ad breaks.
Yeah, that's exactly that was my life. Yeah, I don't think I did it for this. I probably did have to whisk through a lot of adverts. But yeah, it hit me watching it again the other day. That's like last time I watched this, it would have been recording it on like a now long defunct music channel on a cable network.
This is a very VH1 film, I think, because it's about pop music.
How often do you get to say that?
Not very. No. Yeah, I can't remember what the last one was. It was maybe in my Geek show review of In the Realm of the Senses. No, probably not actually. But this is a very VH1 film because it's about pop music, and it's about big mainstream pop music, and it's also weirdly serious, which is what I remember VH1 for.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it is weirdly serious that you kind of wouldn't expect Madness to do. The Nutty Boys, you would imagine like a sort of rollicking, freewheeling, sort of bizarre, daft little film.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a bit of Flame, the Slade film.
Exactly the comparison I was going to go for. Yeah.
I beat you to it. But only in the sense, well, not only in the sense that they're playing a sort of themselves, and it's quite serious, but it's mainly that it's quite serious because originally Slade was going to do, I mean, you expect Slade to be if Slade were doing a film, you'd expect it to be quite silly. And they weren't originally going to do that, were they? They were going to do the Quite a Mess experiment.
The Quite a Mess experiment. Yeah, one of the great lost British films of the 70s there, I think.
And you could imagine Madness sort of following in that sort of tradition, really. They would probably do the Quite a Mess experiments as well.
Well, there was a project they did much later, which was just called Madness, which was a TV sitcom pilot.
Yes.
Yeah, which has an absolutely astonishing array of talent behind it. It was co-written by Richard Curtis and Ben Elton at around the same time that they were working on Blackadder 2. And it was directed by Jeff Posner just before he went on to do Victoria Wood as seen on TV. So you have like a fair collection of the talent who really reinvigorated British TV comedy in the mid-80s. And the show itself is sort of an acceptable Saturday morning thing. I don't know whether that's because, it was around the time Madness were doing things like Michael Caine and Tomorrow's Just Another Day, and maybe they just felt they'd got a bit past that sort of, hey, wacky madness kind of stuff. Or maybe it is one of those ideas that's just so obvious that when you watch it, you think, oh yeah, that's roughly what I expected it to be.
from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd seen their appearances on the Young Ones,
Yes.
then you sort of, that's kind of it, really, isn't it? Only with more things for them to do other than sing.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah.
the episode of the Young Ones, do you know? What's it? Rick says, "Do you know Living Doll by Cliff Richard?" or something like that. So it says, "You omit, I'll smash your face in."
Yeah.
So there was opportunity for them to act in the Young Ones, but yeah, there's a bit more there. But this is serious, isn't it? This is the Towie version of their origin story in a way, because it's sort of structured reality, would we call it, before structured reality was a thing?
That's a very good point. Yeah, because as I sort of hinted at the start of the show, this isn't one of those sort of 8 Mile, that'll be the day kind of things where a musician is playing a character that's obviously based on them, but it is a character. This is like, I think one of the things that makes this thing work, despite its rocky patches, is that there is a sort of purity in it. That basically the reason why this film, came into being is that the members all pooled their first really big royalties check and decided that they wanted to make a film that showed what it was like for them to come up, before it all became a memory. And I think that kind of purity of intent really runs through the film.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because I was reading that and I was thinking, well, what was the motivation? Is it to capture it for posterity? Is it to show people that anybody can form a band if they wanted to? They could have the similar sort of success. This is the route map of doing it. Or is it just that kind of like, almost like the Elvis thing of like, we don't know how long this is going to last for, so let's try our hand at something else.
Yeah,
it's an interesting. I don't know. It's interesting.
I think I would be minded to think that it's the capture it for posterity motivation.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in this, and I suppose this goes back to the autobiopic things. There are a lot of things in this where, if you were like writing a screenplay based on a Madness-esque ska band, there's a lot of quite wiggly things that you wouldn't put this in. Wouldn't put in the fact that their like earliest musical inspirations are Chuck Berry and Fats Domino. You wouldn't have that, would you? You'd have them like you'd have the opening thing. One of them goes into a record shop, the other one's behind the counter, looks at the record and goes, "Oh, Prince Buster, you don't see many people come in and get Prince Buster." "Oh, I know, fancy starting a ska band?" It's nothing like that.
Yeah, no, it isn't, is it? It does show sort of like the tub thumping of trying to find your voice and just trying to just become a unit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It is a process, and you do sort of, you play songs that you either know because it's somehow part of your DNA, because it's your dad's record collection, or it's almost by osmosis, really, isn't it? So those songs, or that people want to hear those songs if you do a gig, because they don't, they're not going to hear an original track straight away, which is, I always think, it's a failing in like a lot of musical biopics, isn't it? That they will just do an original track and the whole audience would go crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever actually been to a gig with like just some lads on the estate or something? They don't burst into a song that nobody's ever heard of, and yet within like the first chorus, they're all singing along to it.
In much the same way that Piece by Piece, the last film we did, made me wish that I could see a music documentary where someone talks about having always had a feeling that they were exactly the same as all the other kids. Watching something like Baz Luhrmann's Elvis does make me wish we could get a music biopic where someone plays like Jailhouse Rock for the first time on stage, and afterwards it's just dead silence with one bloke at the back going, "What the fuck was that?"
What is the track? Because there is a track, isn't there? The gig they have, and it's Jared. It's an actor I love, Jared Kelly, playing is it Dick the Ted, the original frontman of the band? I can't remember what the
Yeah.
track was, but it was a 50s sort of. I don't think it was an Elvis track, but it was a 50s track, wasn't it?
I can't remember what that was actually. I'll just look that up. But yeah, it's interesting that they emphasize like that part of the band's origins, and it's interesting too that the moment where they decide that their ultimate direction isn't going to be like this and they're going to start playing ska is also pretty sort of soft souled, isn't it? It's
It is, yeah.
there's not a moment where they hear the specials on the radio and think, "Wow, we could do that." It's just like, well, we're sort of messing around. We're trying to work out what our sound is, and we're pretty good at this.
Yeah, it's almost like they fall into it, isn't it?
Mm,
It's there's no like conscious. Well, I mean, I don't know in reality if there was a conscious effort, but it doesn't come across that way on film. It's just something that they fall into,
yeah,
which is interesting. It's interesting. It has that kind of like. There's a lot of shrugs in this movie. Shrugs for Suggs, really, isn't there? There's a lot.
yeah,
There is a lot of shrug moments in this movie where it's just like, well, we'll do this then, you know.
yeah.
And I wonder if they sell themselves short, really, as a band. That it's just everything feels quite underpowered and just sort of drifting into
Yeah.
things.
I mean, I quite enjoy it as like, you know, people complain a lot about music biopics and the standard beats they hit and the melodramatic way that they show what it feels like to have your first hit and things like that. I'm not sure. I think it would actually probably feel pretty great to have your first big hit, and I don't mind those, montages of teenage girls running into record shops. It's fine. Genres have their stock scenes. Who gives a shit? But I do sort of admire this film as the least melodramatic take on that template that it is possible to have. Like maybe they, as you say, they are downplaying how dramatic it was, but I wonder if like given the way that the record industry was and to some degree still is, I wonder if there is a sort of buffer period where you're on the dole and you're rehearsing in a band, and then you're very successful. But there's also a period in the middle where you can't quite tell the difference. It doesn't feel like an overnight success. There's still, I mean, the film shows there's still shit jobs to go and work in. You're not rich overnight. You still have to clock on with your nitpicking foreman.
Yeah, I think that is the interesting one of the many interesting things in this is that it does show that buffer sequence, which you don't get in, say, a Baz Luhrmann biopic of Elvis or anything like that, where
Yeah,
you're an overnight sensation, aren't you, in those films or any
yeah,
kind of musical drama? It's you become an overnight sensation. It's not like yeah, but I'm on a retainer, you know. I always think of
yeah,
people like Peter Hook, who's like he was sort of like being like the Hacienda's pop man,
yeah.
whilst he was like, in the top 10, because it's like, well, I'm on a retainer, I'm on like 300 quid a week or something. I'll make a bit of extra money just shifting a few barrels down to the Hacienda because.
Yeah,
But we don't, whether that's a difference between an English thing or an American thing, but you don't see that in American sort of music films because they are overnight sensations, and suddenly the montage shows, like you say, the screaming girls running into the record shop getting the record, brief snatch of the record you hear. Then the next scene is like him buying a car, and then buying his mum a house, and then that's it. They're on top of the world.
Yeah, and this very much isn't like that, and I'm glad because
No.
it does have that real sense of kind of working class English life out. I mean, I mentioned the foreman who Chris like has to like go and battle with every day, who's always very alert for signs that people are clocking off early or coming in late, and it reminded me to a great extent of Leonard Rossiter's part in Billy Liar, which I
Yes. Yeah.
watched again recently. You know, it has that kind of British free cinema feel about
Yes.
it.
Yeah. It really does, and I think that's got to be a sort of low-key influence, hasn't it? It's got to be. They do want to make something that is inherently British and inherently working class, because that is their milieu, you know. And I do wonder if some of it feels underpowered because of the acting. I mentioned Gerard Kelly earlier. So they get a really good actor, and he sings, and then you don't see him again.
Yeah, and that's
And
the
then
curse
you've
of it,
got
isn't it? You can't in a film like this.
you've got musicians who aren't really good actors doing a lot of acting.
It's
It's
fun,
a strange one.
yeah,
It's a strange one.
it's strange. I think any discussion of take it or leave it, not least by the band themselves, always sort of comes down to the acting. And I think, you know, they are tremendously green. They clearly aren't professional actors. And in a weird way, it sort of adds to it because you're watching these people and it's very easy to forget that they're big stars. You know, they seem awkward. They seem ill at
Yes.
ease in front
Yeah.
of the camera.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, the fact that they're not actually good at naturalistic acting makes it more credible. Like I love
It does, yeah. It suits it suits the fact that you're showing them on the road to success
yeah,
in a way that you couldn't do. Like, you couldn't ask somebody to play themselves. It's not convincing, is it? If somebody sold like 1 million records and then they
yeah,
do the film of their life and say, right, play yourself doing a dead end job, it's just not believable, is it? But they manage
no.
that easily.
Yeah. I mean, the golden example for this is the first time we see Suggs, which is like it should be a light bulb moment. So Suggs, a huge hero of my childhood. You know, I loved Madness, but I specifically loved Suggs. I thought he was just a sort of a wonderful kind of aspirational kind of front man where you're seeing someone who feels like the kind of kid you would be friends with if he went to your school is suddenly like leading this hugely successful band. And he comes into the rehearsal and he sort of fidgets with his microphone stand nervously and says, "You know, I know a couple of rock and roll songs." And it's wonderful. I'm sure, like Suggs, he doesn't feel like he has a celebrity persona. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who sees himself in those terms. But you couldn't have played this better if you wanted to kind of break down a celebrity persona, to have a counterintuitively low-key introduction to this guy where you can see why the people at the time, you know, the rest of the band didn't know immediately that this was going to be their front man and this was going to be the man who would take them to stardom. There's that it's just that lovely moment where you think, oh yeah, he could just be another guy auditioning.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's and that, in a way, you do think then, well, that's good acting, you know. But and which is not something that is leveled to a lot of the performances in this. But yeah, it is, isn't it? But then Suggs did sort of, if anybody was going to sort of, you'd imagine, get an acting career, it probably would be Suggs. And he has, to a certain extent, hasn't he? You know, he has appeared in films. There's a dreadful film where he plays like a Greenpeace singer who gets
Oh, is there?
murdered. Oh yeah, it's an awful Channel 4 film. I think it's called final frame or something like that. He gets murdered on stage, I think, and it's dreadful.
Right.
It's a dreadful film.
Yeah, I was looking through this, and I noticed he's got like a few roles in things like The Edge of Love, the Dylan
Yeah,
Thomas.
he plays the crooner who died in the Blitz.
Oh,
Who
right.
sang "Hang Out the Stars in Indiana,"
Right.
which I remember from With Nail and I can't think of the guy's name. I can see his face, but yeah, he's singing in a club, and then the air raid happens, and the club's demolished, and then you see his body sort of amongst the rubble. Yeah,
But yeah, the final frame, 1990.
that's it. Yeah,
his last acting role until 1999, which I think, judging by your comments, may not be coincidental.
he's in an episode of Press Gang as well.
Yes.
Is that
exactly
before Final Frame or after Final Frame?
It's slightly before. They're in the same year as each other.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting a lot of things that I think are basically, because of the people he's working with. He's briefly in The Tall Guy, which I assume is because Richard Curtis did the Madness series pilot a few years earlier.
Yeah. There's a good story about The Edge of Love, actually. It's about the premiere.
Oh, yeah.
They'd all watch the premiere, and then you go off for your drinks and your party and what have you. And for some reason, the bar wasn't open. And Suggs walks towards the bar, and the bouncer says, "The bar's not open yet." And he jumped over the bar and went, "It is now, sunshine." Started pouring every drink. Which is the most Suggs thing you could imagine, really, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think, like, Scar, once it had escaped its Jamaican origins and become an international thing, Scar always kind of teeters on the brink of being uncool. And I think the great thing about that two-tone generation is that they always hedged against that by having really cool lead singers, Suggs, Pauline Black, Terry Hall. They made the bands feel like a gang. They were tough, they were aspirational, they were funny. They were genuine, like, working class cool that you were looking at there.
That's it. You don't see many of that really after sort of like the 80s, do you? But the sort of late 70s, early 80s just was defined by bands like that, even slightly on the orbit, like Dexys and stuff like that.
Yes.
They're a unit. They're so incredibly identifiable just by the look, straight away, and the front man, that's like the leader of the gang.
Yeah.
And that definitely, that is definitely Suggs and Madness, absolutely. Although not in reality, because the leader, of course, is Mike, isn't it? Who is very, very quiet in this movie, which again does sort of like, it's convincing, but it's not convincing because obviously he's a big noise in that band, and you wouldn't imagine it from the film, really.
I think it's one of those classic things, though, isn't it, where a band of young kids forms, and there's an immediate deference to the one who can play the best.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot this year about the Manic Street Preachers, who were another formative band for me, because I've been reading Keith Cameron's 167 Songs of Hatred and Failure. And you get the sense with that band that they divided themselves very quickly, that there was an immediate recognition of, James and Sean can play, and Nicky and Richie can write and look cool. And that's the sort of division of labor for the first album or so, And I think with Mike in Madness, it's the same thing. He didn't have to like impose his will on the band by being a sort of big personality. I think it was more like Jerry Dammers in The Special, where they respected him because he was an amazing musician.
That sort of respect becomes voluntarily, doesn't it? Yeah,
it's
true. Yeah, but it'd be nice to sort of see some of that in the film, and I don't think it does. I don't think it captures that sort of essence particularly well.
It doesn't, yeah. I wonder if is it still at a point where if you have someone like talking about chromatic key shifts, you're going to get bottled off by the punks in the
Yeah,
audience.
it's probably true, actually. Yeah, and also because, like, his persona, his screen persona, is not the same.
Yeah,
He's a big noise in reality in the band, but it doesn't come across on film. Probably because you've got more obvious characters who are more comfortable on camera that you can easily hook and identify with, which is basically Suggs and Kicks as well, isn't it, Lee?
yeah,
Who is brilliant in this because he
yeah,
is just a constant hapless clown, really.
yeah,
The
yeah.
guy, the guy who doesn't realise when he's just written off a van that he's driving.
And it's funny because comparing this to the Madness pilot that Curtis and Elton wrote, there's a bit of that still in there, but I think by that time the role of the band's sort of comic star has definitively become Chaz Smash, because he's the one with the best comedy voice and he gets a lot of the sort of big laughs in that. But yeah, it's interesting how in this one the roles aren't fully formed. You can see
No.
it's been put into production because people look at Madness and you think, oh, they're like a gang. They should have a movie where they play a gang. But the roles of the individual members in that gang, I think, would maybe surprise people who, got into Madness when those roles were fully formed.
That's true. So you mentioned Chaz, and in my head, I just went to an anecdote that Sean Hughes did on, I think it was the Richard Herring podcast.
Okay.
Because apparently they went to the same gym, and he's very. He says that Chaz was very open about being nude around the changing rooms, to the point that when he came in from doing a workout, Chaz was drying his ass with the little hairdryer on the wall, pulling his ass cheeks apart and drying. to which I just like, hey, yeah. To which Sean was like, put your baggy trousers on, for fuck's sake. Now, I could see that happening. I wish I didn't, but I could see that happening.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's a mental image, isn't it?
It's quite something, yeah. But yeah, it's like, I mean, what time did you get into Madness? Because we both talked about liking them when we were young, but what sort of time frame is that like for you?
For me, I would probably, I was thinking about this because it's interesting, isn't it? You almost make a conscious effort in a way when you're a kid, don't you? It's like your first thing is it's your music by osmosis. It's your mum and dad's record collection. So I think one of the first bands I really got into was like the Beatles. I know that sounds really pat and pretentious almost, but it was because
it is.
I've got I live not far from Liverpool. I've got parents who were in the teenage years and the 20s in the 60s. It's inevitable they're going to have Beatles records. And that's something you pore over and look at. So a lot of my sort of childhood is like Elvis, Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles, and whatever my sister was listening to, which was invariably sort of Wham and stuff like that, and a bit of Madness, I guess. But they were on the periphery. They were funny. They were the gang that turned up on Saturday morning telly that you could laugh at, and you heard the music, and it's music that you sort of any toddler or young kid can just bop about to, So that was one thing. Conscious effort thing where I come into that is like, I say, you listen to the Beatles, that's by osmosis, and then you sort of venture out a little bit. So if you get to sort of like the early to mid 90s, Oasis were just coming out. So it's a natural progression when you're looking for something of your own and your foundation is the Beatles. that you're gonna sort of your ears are gonna prick up when you hear Oasis.
Yes,
Prior to that, listening to the Beatles, I was always dismissed as like the weird kid at school because he listens to old music.
yeah,
About 2 years into Oasis, suddenly those sort of people who were sort of like taking the piss about you listening to the Beatles, like, have you heard the Beatles? You've got to get into the Beatles. Fuck off, you know. But at that point, I do remember sort of like raiding my mum and dad's collection again. And sort of going through, we had this Reader's Digest sort of like massive collection of 70s. So it was like whole album was 1970, whole album was 1971, 72, 73, all the way to 79. And
yeah,
there's all the hits on there. I remember hearing Roxy Music a lot, thinking I'd probably get into Roxy Music in my teenage years. And sure enough, I did.
yeah,
You know? But then there's a point where you do just want a bit of fun.
yeah.
And that's where Madness came in. So sort of mid to late 90s, I'm sort of probably just done, 30 years ago, I've just done my GCSEs, so 16, something like that. Suddenly Madness, because you go to a lot of family dues, wedding anniversaries, engagement parties, christenings, and there's a lot of madness because you just know it gets people on the dance floor. And it is the dance that white men can do and don't feel embarrassed about doing or shame or sheepish about doing. So it was a big sort of influence in a way, because you saw people slightly older than you that you wanted to emulate or you looked up to who were into that. So then you do sort of fall into that sort of thing as well. So
It's funny that you mentioned the dance because, I mean, in terms of how this film gets right moments that most musical biopics screw up, it has that sort of moment of inspiration where they're all doing the nutty walk just spontaneously in the underground. And that's normally the cheesiest moment of any musical biopic, the one where someone like spontaneously comes up with a classic thing. But in this, you sort of think, that probably is where it comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I know what you mean. A lot of it's such a cliche, isn't it? When somebody goes, "Hey guys, listen to this I'm working on." It always reminds me of like Peter Andre running into the jungle to say he just wrote Insania. hey guys, listen to this.
Yeah, that's the real life version of it, where you just excitedly run over Henry Lester and nobody likes it.
Nobody gives a shit. But it does appear on so many biopics, doesn't it? Where you hear somebody, I've just been fiddling around, and it's like dum 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 dum. A riff develops, and somebody says, "Hey, yeah, you should work on that." And then next thing you know, it's a full song out of nowhere.
It's one of the reasons why Rocket Man is the best of this cycle of movies, because it's a musical, and you can just have people sort of suddenly come up with a song and start singing along to it and dancing to it, and it's part of the genre. It's natural.
Yeah, that's true. And there's that great scene in Rocket Man as well, isn't it, where they meet Stephen Graham's music exec, and he's like, "What have you got? Yeah. What song have you got?" And he plays a bit. He goes, "No, it's rubbish." So he plays another amazing song that is that's rubbish as well. So you're getting the hits in a really interesting way, aren't you? They're just thrown out there. It's much better than those contrived scenes of like, "I've been working on this song. I wonder what you think about it."
Yeah. John Lennon sits down in the studio, opens a newspaper, and goes, "Oh boy."
Yeah.
I think it treats the hits much better than this, where it has this sort of odd loss of nerve where at the end, after like diligently charting Madness, coming together and working out what their musical style should be and tentatively writing a few songs, there's this fairly awkward montage of basically every famous song they'd released up to that point, which plays in like the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, true. That's true, actually. Yeah, it does sort of feel like, well, we better put this in. We're up against it now. The credits are coming any minute. Let's just whack this in there.
But it's strange because that restraint is obviously one of the film's big strong points. it starts off with what seemed to me to be a statement of intent, where they're at the airport, they're about to jet off on a world tour, and then it cuts to them sort of years earlier in a dingy record shop in London. It's like as if it's saying, look, all the stuff that you expect to see in a musical biopic, we're not doing that. We're not doing that here.
Yeah, that's true. And that's this for a film that has not got the most credible actors in. There's a tremendous sense of reality and realism, and
Yeah.
that is through the story they want to tell,
Mm.
obviously, but it's also through just the milieu of London at that time is just really well captured, I think.
Yeah, and
It is
it's
working class. It is shabby. It is on the bones of your arse looking.
yeah.
And I think that's done really well.
And there's a lot, I assume there's a lot of improvisation. There's a lot of dicking
Yes,
about,
I'm
which
told
feels
that there's
very
about
real.
5 pages of script, and the rest is just. So I imagine it's very much like it is structured reality, isn't it? I imagine it's very much
Yeah,
we in this trench of the film we need to get from A to C,
yeah.
and then it's just up to them to improvise it. I know one of the complaints that the band had was that the first take was always the best for them, but
Mm,
unfortunately, on a film set, you've got the crew and what have you. They're not used to first takes being the best. They're used to
yeah,
actors warming up, so they did lament that a lot of what they thought was the best bits of them was lost because people were setting up around them at the time rather than paying attention.
yeah. I can believe that. I think the film is at its best when it has that sense of freshness. There's that lovely scene where they're on the like deserted London Underground platform, and they've got those fluorescent lighting tubes, and they're just
Yeah, I love
doing a
that.
Star Wars fight, and
I
it's
love that. I
great.
love that. It's brilliant. And again, it is that kind of relatability, isn't it? If you're watching a film that sees a load of people going off, jetting off on a world tour, leaving saying goodbye to the loved ones at the airport and getting,
Yeah,
you can identify with that, but you can
no,
identify with dicking about on a deserted platform at like 11 o'clock at night because you
yeah,
probably did that yesterday. So, oh yeah, that is a cheat, and that's to its credit. It is a film that is sort of saying, if you want this, it can be achievable. We're exactly the same as you. There's no airs and graces about it.
yeah. And I think they said something about that at the time. They said that they hoped people would see this and realize that, there's no distance between themselves and a band like Madness, that if we can do it, you can do it as well.
Yeah,
Some of the sense of reality, in retrospect, is a bit hairy because there's that bit where they get mobbed by skinheads in
mm,
some public toilets. And they went out and cast real skinheads for that, which,
yeah,
I mean, there's a history with skinheads in the ska scene. Obviously, it was originally that kind of Jamaican rude boy look that crossed over to the white working classes, and it crossed over to the far right in a way that, like, I remember when I was a kid, skinheads were like a folk devil. They were someone
yes, yeah,
your parents would tell you about to keep
yeah,
you indoors. It was
yeah,
only really when Shane Meadows made This Is England that I learned about the history of it. And, I shouldn't be surprised by it because racists are often quite thick, that they adopted this Jamaican form of dress in order to say, we don't want any Jamaicans in
yeah,
our
yeah,
country.
yeah.
Uh, but one of the skinheads who's in the toilets is Ian Stewart Donaldson,
Yes,
who
yes, yeah.
was the lead singer of Screwdriver.
Mm,
Now, this was at a point where Screwdriver were kind of a sort of solid enough punk band who were fizzling out because in the UK, at least, punk itself was fizzling out. And he split them and reformed them as an explicitly like white supremacist band
mm.
the year after this film came out. But it's quite a wild thing to think about Madness and Ian Stewart Donaldson being in the same sort of cultural space, but at that time they
Yeah.
were really,
That's how
yeah,
they were, yeah. Because, like you say, it's a fascinating moment, really, isn't it? Because you say a lot of these sort of ska gigs were like that. You know, it was
mm,
this weird sort of like meeting point of second generation Windrush
yeah,
kids and fucking far right dickheads, and then everybody in between.
yeah. It's what like very early in their career, Chas Smash got in a bit of trouble because he said something which I think is like one of the classic naive kid things to say, where he was asked about the far right presence in ska fandom, and he said, "Oh, we don't care if like National Front kids are coming to our gigs so long as they just have fun and enjoy the music." And like I say, I can sort of understand that being, a thing that a kid without much life experience would think. But I can also understand why the music press would briefly a bit, oh.
Yeah,
He is the ska band, and they're probably the only major ska band of that cycle who were all white, and they're saying something like that.
yeah,
Of course, it all turned out to be a complete misunderstanding, and that isn't Madness's politics at all. But it was like a brush, I guess, between this band who successfully, I don't want to say mainstreamed ska, but Ghost Town got to number 1,
mm,
but they took it out of this political context where it's an expression of like inner city troubles and you know things like that in the early Thatcher era, into something where it's just like a national sing along. And I think
yeah,
for the most part they did that responsibly.
yeah, yeah. I do think also there's a sense that it's the press, isn't it? The press are
Yeah,
always out to get anything that is doing well. They try and find something to pick at, and dig at, and
yeah,
poke at. And that was one of them. But I mean, you're quite right. The track record speaks for itself. They took something that was very reputable by itself. I mean, Specials is a fantastic band, but their own track record, Madness's own track record, shows that they did make it mainstream. They did make it something that wasn't
mm,
just like a pocket of or a passing phase.
yeah,
It
yeah.
did become, it is in our national conscience, really.
I always find I get very defensive when I'm talking about ska with anyone from America, because like in America, ska is sort of what happens when a pop punk band realise that their bassist learned trombone at school. That's what it always sounds
What
like
was
to me.
what was that dreadful band? Oh, the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Bowling
Fuck
for
off!
Soup, that sort of
Oh,
thing. Yeah,
fuck off! Dreadful. I remember seeing the Mighty and Mighty Boss Tones, and again, they probably came out in my teenage years, or just. But I was aware of Madness by then, and you just think, "Oh, fuck off! You're like a teamy Madness,"
yeah,
Not that we said teamy back then, but it was like
yeah. How
they.
forward thinking would you be if you said that
It'd be
back
great when
then?
I believe it was me that coined the phrase. Yeah, you're like a teeny madness. Yeah. But it is it is that thing of like, oh, we've got madness at home.
Yeah, yeah.
The
And I
roller.
think,
I would probably call it the roller cola madness if I had to come up with anything back then.
yeah, you'd probably say like the Tesco's own
Yeah,
brand
yeah.
madness, wouldn't you?
Panda
Yeah.
cola madness. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what part of Madness's legacy and part of their success is as they did mainstream it while also keeping that kind of grit and that kind of working class authenticity and that audible root in Jamaican music that isn't there in a lot of later generation ska bands.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I mean, this is proof, isn't it? This is proof.
Yeah,
This film is proof that it becomes mainstream because you're making a film about it.
yeah,
That's a huge sort of thing. And they made sure that the grit was still there. It's still very much in evidence because they're not doing a silly Saturday morning wacky run around. They're telling an authentic story of like
Yeah.
how they came to be.
And I think that's what makes it interesting, but it's also what made it a colossal commercial failure in its day.
Yeah.
I think Suggs described it as something like the beginning and also the end of our career as movie stars.
Yeah. But you get a shot, you know.
Yeah.
You take the shot. I think there's some very clever things in it. I don't think it's. I mean, it's only what it's a short film. It's not a huge film, you know.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not about to sit here and say it's a great film, but there's some clever things in it, and it does. You can soak in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You can really soak in the atmosphere. I admire the intentions. You can soak in the atmosphere, which I think is very good. There's not many other films like it.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably reach to something like Breaking Glass, Hazel O'Connor, which is around about the same time. That again does that sort of like it does that kind of like finger on the pulse of sort of late 70s, early 80s London really well.
Yeah, and I think like there have been attempts at doing that sort of rise to fame narrative since, but it's always been in a context where you are meant to think about their eventual success far more than take it all in this one.
Yes, yeah.
Like I mentioned 8 Mile earlier, and that's quite a gritty film, but it's also like the cliche about it at the time was it's Rocky with rap. And it's like, well, this isn't Rocky with rap. This is Billy Liar with Scar, which is a pretty
yeah. Sign me up for that. Sign me up for that. Yeah. But the thing is, as well, it's the type of film where you think, although you know the story, you know, you've seen it in the opening thingy, they're jetting off to a world tour, you know, or whatever it is, you know, it's the way the film plays out, you get the sense that this could all fall apart at any moment.
Yeah.
because they must have thought that as well. You know, this is just something we're doing to amuse ourselves. Oh, we might have something in this, but it might fall apart at any moment. You know, that's all those preoccupations of like being in a band is there on screen, and you, as an audience, you feel it. You do think, well, yeah, this could go nowhere for them.
Yeah, and it's for all the film's limitations, I think it is incredible that it bottles that feeling so successfully.
It does, yeah. It really does.
Which is why I'd like to draw this to a close by making a direct appeal to the DVD and Blu-ray labels of Great Britain, because this should be out somewhere. Sadly, I think Network ceased trading, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
This would be a natural for Network, but you know, BFI Flipside could do it.
BFI Flipside. I'm just pointing to my. I'm live from the. You only see this when you get the YouTube, but once again, I'm live from the Criterion closet. I'm just pointing to my BFI Flipside. Why is it not? Why have they not done that? You know, they brought out Dance Craze 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, why not follow that up? Why not do that? You know, but
and you know, I don't think it was even on Flipside. I think the BFI main label.
That's true.
Did a very lavish restoration of the Pet Shop Boys film It Couldn't Happen Here, which I love, but is even more of a commercial suicide attempt than this is.
It is. Yeah, and again, another one. You didn't expect the Pet Shop Boys to do this film.
They wouldn't normally do that kind of thing. Yeah. So
take it or leave it. Take it or leave it.
Oh, that's good. Should we make that the end of every pop screen from now on, where we have to decide: are we going to take it, or we're going to share or shaft? The reference point that I don't think was even mainstream 20 years ago when it was happening.
No. Let's face it. If you were signing on in your 20s, you fucking love that. You'd fucking love that reference. Then you know you're pissing yourself laughing at this now. Anybody else? Got news for you, you fucked, you know.
Listeners, if you were starting a ska band in your early 20s in 2005, Yeah, you won't have made it anywhere because you'll have been too busy laughing at Robert Kilroy Silk's old game show.
Or trying to make sense of Golden Ball with Jasper Carrots.
That's the secret ingredient, isn't it? That's why Madness got somewhere. They weren't just sat around watching fucking Button Moon all day.
As I said, there was no bizarre, complicated game shows on television of an afternoon back then. It was just like repeats of God knows what, and like American imports or Aussie imports, like a country practice instead.
Yeah, but maybe if Madness's career had sort of taken off after Neighbours, that would have been an issue.
That could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, they weren't fans of Crown Court, so they were out sort of coming up with the goods in the late 70s instead of sitting in watching that.
Yeah, I think we've basically explained why Madness is successful there.
Yeah, because they were for the right people at the right time. Yeah. But yeah, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I certainly would take it. I think for all its flaws, I enjoyed this film an awful lot.
Yeah. There are flaws. It's occasionally a bit of a slog. There's some lunges in it, but it's a nice record.
It's a good hangout. It's a good
hangout. Yeah, it's a good hangout. Yeah.
And it captures I think it captures their music too at a point where they weren't quite, when you listen to the singles compilations, which is where I first encountered Madness, you get the feeling this band arrived fully formed. The Prince is a great song, One Step Beyond, already iconic, one of those songs that you think about when you think of Madness. Then it's My Girl, and it just seems to come in a roller coaster. So I like that there's some album tracks and B-sides on here, like the title track, like Don't Quote Me on That, like The Business, which do sound a bit sort of cheap and rain-sodden. They haven't got access to Langer and Winstanley back when they were doing them. The production isn't as sharp, and it just... It reaffirms that, the people you're seeing on screen now living these lives are the people who made this music.
That's true.
Right. Do you want to remind people where they can find you online, Mark?
Sure, yeah. You can find me on Letterboxd. Just search for Mark Cunliffe. You can find me on The Geek Show, of course. I'm also on IndieMDB. And sometimes if you pick up an Arrow film, you might find a booklet essay that I've written in there as well.
As for me, I have a website, grahamwilliamsonfilms.com, where you can find out about exhibitions and film screenings I'm doing at the moment. I don't have anything in the pipeline yet, but hopefully fairly soon I'll be able to announce something. I'm on Letterboxd. Just search for Graham Williamson. And I'm on Instagram at Graham W Films. Until then, it is all eggs, bacon, and bean, a fried slice. I've been Graham.
And I've been Mark.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Bye.